right, hi everybody. I'm Taluka from Markers and Minions, and tonight's video is going to be for planning third grade Unit 1. And I said this yesterday in my second grade planning video that just a disclaimer, tonight will not be a mini lesson. It's going to take a while, and I'm going to be planning both California and national. So both editions, I'll be going over like the differences. For the most part, though, it's laid out in the same way. We pretty much have the same lessons. Sometimes there will be different like language skills, phonics skills. I don't know about this unit, we'll see, but I don't think so. And then sometimes in the national edition, they change the wording of the close reading lessons slightly. So, but it's more or less the same lesson. So I'll be able to do it simultaneously tonight. All right, so I have these planning templates. These are free on my TPT shop. I made these 2 years ago when I first started this group, and I made it because I needed to restructure my week and what my day 1 through day 5 looked like with Benchmark, and I think it makes a lot more sense this way. And so I'll show you how to fill everything out into your week's time, and I'll show you the differences between just following the TRS or looking at this, and you can make a decision for yourself on how to best organize for you. So let's see. Also, I prepped for tonight's video, and in doing so, and what I've done for all the grade levels so far is I've taken notes, so my general observations of the unit, patterns, things that I've moved around, okay? And I typed up a materials list that is color-coded, and tonight we're gonna be using specific colors, and it will connect, and I'll explain why I've chosen the colors that I've chosen. Okay, and I included a page for the writing and what the writing looks like in the California edition versus what it looks like in the national edition, and hopefully it offers some clarity around the performance task national teachers that you will be seeing. Came up with some extension ideas. And then I pulled images from my classroom. These are also posted in our Unit 1 photo album. And I teach third, so all of the photos that I share are photos that I've done either with my straight third class or my 2-3 combo. So these are some of the images and how I use them. So that's included. And then I came up with an anchor chart. And I first made this anchor chart when I started doing my workshops. So I finally digitized it. And then there's also going to be one that the students can have that has blanks. So as you're teaching it or after you're teaching it, they can fill in the blanks. They can use this to follow along, and it's like their size. This one, the idea is you would project it onto your dot cam and then have the image up on your whiteboard, put a piece of butcher paper, anchor chart paper up there, trace it, and then you've got a full-on anchor chart that you can use to tie in all of the concepts. I use this to teach background knowledge before we go into the unit. So on day 1, the kids are already introduced to the unit because the week prior, I go over this anchor chart with them, and that's all I do. It's a full lesson. It's not even a mini lesson. But I like to do that because it builds background knowledge and it weaves in vocabulary. And then every time we read a text from our unit, we go back to our chart. We say, hey, this text connects to this part of the chart that we talked about. So it's a nice visual and builds knowledge. All right, hi Carlos. Hi Jamie. Okay, and let's see. So the purpose of planning using these templates is not because the information is not there. So if you look in the TRS, it's all there for you. It's all planned out. It's mapped out in a week's time for you. So yes, it's there. But in doing this process, you're extracting the skills out of your TRS and you're putting them here. And while you're doing that, you're making decisions for your class. And you're analyzing, you're processing, and as a result, you have a clearer picture of what you're supposed to be teaching and how your unit develops, okay? So once you have a better idea of the end goal, this is true for everything, right? Once you have a better idea of the end, you're not gonna get lost in the middle. So for me, doing it this way really makes me feel more confident in my teaching. It helps me get out of that TRS so that I'm not clinging to it during my lessons, because I have a very clear understanding of what I'm supposed to be teaching. So that's the objective for these planning templates. Now I'm going to be showing you screenshots of the TRS because I don't have the physical one. First of all, this is the week 1 view for the California edition. So in your TRS, at the start of your week, you're gonna see something like this. It has the pictures of the text at the bottom, on the side, and at the bottom it's got like your spelling, your vocabulary, okay? So I really like this weekly layout because I can see what lessons go with what text. Now, also California, when you are online and you look at the suggested pacing guide for the week, this is what it looks like. And this is more reflective of also what the national TRS looks like. So our suggested pacing guide, I found this again online on our online TRS. They break it down by day. There's still the lesson numbers there. There's no text titles or anything, but it's broken up by day. And then it's the same for the national edition. That's what yours looks like. Okay, so now what I want to show you here, and you know what, since it's exactly the same, I'm going to use nationals because it's a little more clear. I want to show you a little bit of the inspiration, main differences between this weekly layout and my planning templates before we dive in. So one thing that right away didn't work for me was that day 3, lesson 8 is the introduce spelling. So a lot of you, know this about me. I don't like to wait until day 3 to teach the spelling. I like to bump that up to day 1. I teach it explicitly, and then they can practice it all week long in a Word Work Center. This second phonics lesson here, the spelling lesson, is in context. It's using your word study. That in my TRS, I have it just, or in my planners, I just have that bumped up 1 day, no big difference. The lesson is still the same. The other thing I want to point out is that on day 4, that's where the kids begin drafting. That's also when the language skill is introduced, so the grammar skill. It's not brought up until you're actually using it in context, which is great. Like, you should be teaching it in context, showing them what it looks like. But that's another one where I first teach it explicitly day 1 with my spelling so that they can practice. Okay, now the other big difference is on the first day, whenever we come across a new text, I prefer to just read it aloud to the students for enjoyment. So a lot of the times the TRS has us read half of a text, so we'll do the key details lesson one day, and the next day we'll read the second part of it and do the key details lesson part 2. I don't like breaking it up that way. I like to just read it to my kids, model fluent reading, make it exciting, get that buy-in happening. That's really your opportunity to make it so that these texts aren't boring, right? It's up to you. You can put on your teaching hat, read it with expression, get all excited about it, and then just read it for enjoyment, and then that's it. Then we close it for the day. And then day 2, that's when we begin our close reading. So because of that, since we're not doing any close reading on day 1, that means that this close reading lesson gets pushed a day, and that means that I have a ton to squeeze into the rest of the week. And so I will show you my planning process and how I prioritize what lessons have the most time spent on them. Okay? Okay. So, hello everybody. So Unit 1, our essential question is, why do people participate in government? So I'm going to write that at the top of my unit overview to get me started. All right, now I went in and I made a couple of changes today to this planning template. I'm changing these all the time. Don't worry if yours doesn't look exactly like mine. I just bumped the vocabulary up to here. And the reason being is because your build vocabulary lesson, before it was down here, is connected to your close reading lessons, but I still like to have it as a separate listing here. So close reading skills, we're gonna move this way as we plan, and I'm going to be using my pink Flair pen, and it's going to, all of my reading comprehension lessons are going to be using this color, and then including the vocabulary strategies. All right, so if you want to use the same color coding as me, I'm going to be doing pink or red, so I have it printed out as red, blue for spelling, and green for language and writing. Okay, so in week 1, here's where I look. So your close reading lessons are going to be underneath your short reads. And I typically just, if the lesson is the same, key details, I just write it one time. If it's different, like key details, main idea, and then like key events and summarize, so it's a different text type, then we can write it twice. But for example, in week 1 with working together and then election day, they're both gonna be key detail lessons. So I'm just gonna write key details and main idea. And that second one on election day, there's going to be an emphasis on answering text-dependent questions. That's actually only in the California edition, though. Okay, now the second skill I'm going to pull out is analyze cause and effect. So I'm going to write cause and effect. And I just write it, you know, shorthand, just for myself so I know what the skill is. Then I see analyze graphic features, maps, photos, and captions. So I'm going to write graphic features. Then I see that same lesson for election day, the key details. Then I see sequencing, so analyzing the text structure, or it says text connections. So I'm just going to write sequencing for that. Okay, then I see that we have a context clues lesson, so I will list that, and then I'm also going to pull it out and list it separately under build vocabulary. I'll show you what that looks like. And for those of you that are planning with me for the first time, I do this because not every week has an explicit vocabulary lesson. So what vocabulary looks like in Benchmark is you're not teaching like just words and definitions. It's going to be a building vocabulary, or making meaning of unfamiliar words in context type of lesson. So giving students the tools, the strategies to figure out what a word means that's unfamiliar to them. Okay, and this is sort of like disruptive to what we are used to in the past, because we're not necessarily having them memorize a set word list and then we're testing them at the end of the week, and rather we are giving them strategies. And I prefer that because the students have different vocabulary words that they need help with, so what, this student might not understand, this student does know that word, etc. So I have them just choose their own words for the week. I don't even use the list that Benchmark gives, and that's it. We use a strategy. So there's context clues, there's shades of meaning, which is usually in the literature units, but it's not every week. And so I pull this out because I want to make a mental note that, like, if there isn't an explicit lesson that week, I need to go in and kind of do my own teaching around that, bring in my own lesson there, okay? Because I never want to just not go over vocabulary, because these texts have a ton of words that the kids need help with. All right, and then finally, the last lesson for every week, or the last close reading lesson anyway, is going to be a cross-text analysis lesson. So it's compare and contrast two texts on the same topic. So I'm just going to write compare and contrast. Okay, so that's what my first week looks like so far. National Edition, instead of saying use context clues, it says domain-specific vocabulary, same thing. Hi, Gail. You're welcome, Jody. Hi, Destiny. Long time no see. All right. Cindy, do you have GLAD units or pictorial input charts to use for the other units? Yes. And that is under the photo albums in this group. I have an album that says unit introductions, and there are all my charts. And then in addition to just like the intro charts, anchor charts, I also do other pictorials for some of the units, like units 3, units 5, and those are in the individual photo albums. So just a PSA, guys. In our photo albums, there's one for every single unit. So there are my photos, there are photos that other teachers have shared. And so before you start a unit, always look there and you'll find a lot of neat ideas. And you can save the photos. All right. Week 2, and I'm going this way, okay? I'm going to see in week 2 what my lessons are, and I'm going to make a note of what is repeating from week 1. So in week 2, I see key details and summarize. So key details. Then I see, so there's 2 of those lessons, right? 3 and 5. I'm just going to write it once. And then I see lesson 6 says refer to the text when answering questions about informative text. So whenever I see refer to the text when answering questions, for myself, I just write TDQ, text-dependent questions. So it's teaching the kids to go back to the text to find evidence to then answer a question. Okay, and national years looks a little different, so give me just a second. And then I see lesson 8 is on cause and effect, and mental note, that is a repeat, right? So that's a lesson that we're going to build upon over now 2 weeks. So here's lesson 1. Week 1, cause and effect, and I put my little spiral sign, and then we're going to be practicing that skill again in week 2, okay? So already here, teachers, when you get to your 15, 20-minute mark and the kids aren't getting it yet, it's okay. You can have, take a deep breath, sigh of relief, knowing that you're going to have another opportunity to come right back to it in week 2. All right. After that, I see we've got draw inferences. And again, I'm just going down this list. Draw inferences. And then at the bottom, that cross-text analysis lesson, compare and contrast again. So, and hey, look, there's no specific vocabulary lesson that week. But I bet that text, it is my right, has plenty of words that we still need to clarify for our students. Okay, and national, this is what your week 2 looks like. You've got key details, main idea, draw inferences. You have 2 lessons that are drawing inferences. And then you have cause and effect, and then compare and contrast. So national users, since yours doesn't look like this, what you're doing is you're taking this view and you're finding your reading lessons. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, that's week 1. Week 1 has the most. Okay. You're welcome, Gina. Jennifer, my ELA block is 10:40 to 12. That includes small groups. You're welcome, Debbie. Hi, Wendy. Hi, Brent. Okay, week 3. This is what I'm looking at. By the way, this is the online TRS has a Unit 3 text photographed, so ignore that. Okay, I have main idea and key details, always, right? First read of anything, that is the lesson that you do. Okay, and then I have identify genre features, and that is not in the National Edition. In National, in California, what I noticed when I was making the close reading companions for all the units is whenever California had a genre features lesson, that didn't go into your National Edition. You've got some other type of lesson. So those are unique to just us here in California. So genre features of info text. And those lessons, whenever it's genre features, I like to keep those quick, pre-make an anchor chart, like a grid, just go over the features, find a couple examples. That's it. And then we've got analyze sequential text connections. So that is sequencing. And I remember in week 1, we had a sequencing lesson. So that is going to spiral. So that's carried on in week 3. And then I've got lesson 11 is analyze graphic features to make inferences. Okay, so that's interesting, right? That's worth noting. Graphic features, yes, we had a lesson on that in week 1. But this lesson is not just analyze graphic features in week 3. It's analyze graphic features to then make inferences, which we started doing in week 2. So it's a lesson that relies, at least I think it relies, on that lesson and that lesson. Use graphic. I spelled graphic wrong. Dang it, I always have to do that once when I'm doing these videos. There go my pretty plans. Use graphic features to draw inferences. And I think that since there is that week 3 lesson that combines both of those, I'm going to put an asterisk next to the inferencing lesson in week 2 and the graphic features lesson in week 1. Okay, meaning that I need to teach those. Like, I have to make it a priority to get those lessons in. That's also probably an indication that that's going to be assessed, right? If it's something that keeps coming up like that. Okay, and the last lesson is the compare and contrast. And I do not see any sort of explicit vocabulary lesson. In National, however, yours, you do. You have a domain-specific vocabulary lesson, so you're going to be analyzing vocabulary that's specific to this domain using context clues, and then analyze sequence, analyze graphic features, and compare and contrast. All right, there's California, and there's National. And these, I have them completed for both, and this will be part of what I send you at the end of today. So if I'm moving too fast at all tonight, like don't worry, you're gonna get these completed plans sent to you as well. Okay, next we have the spelling for all 3 weeks. So, and on this view in your TRS, like I said, the words are under here. You can find the pattern in the lessons that are listed under word study. So in week 1, that is going to be lessons 8 and 11, and then weeks 2 and weeks 3 are going to be 9 and 12. So, see in week 1, it is short vowels. And that's also for national. Week 2, it's going to be long A. And week 3 will be long O and long U. And I'm doing that in blue. You're welcome, guys. Okay, so now with green, I'm going to write the language skill and the writing in green, both of them, because they're taught together, right? They live together. So in week 1, I pulled out the skill for both its concrete and abstract nouns for both California and national. And again, you can find yours in your drafting lesson. So take a minute right now, if you're not familiar with your TRS yet, take a minute to open up your lesson 12 for week 1, where it's drafting. Open up your spread, and on that second page, you'll see build language, concrete and abstract nouns. That's what your skill is for the week. Week 2, it's going to be verb tenses. And week 3, it's going to be, in National Edition, it's just going to be a review of weeks 1 and 2. So more concrete and abstract nouns and verb tenses. And then for California, we've got subject-verb agreements in simple sentences. So subject-verb agreement. All right, so that's what we're looking like so far. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I get so excited filming these videos, so this whole week I haven't been able to sleep at night just because of adrenaline. It's crazy. Okay, writing type. So national, one of the biggest differences between California and the National Edition is the writing. So in the National Edition, you have something called performance task practice and the performance tasks. So California teachers, we do have performance tasks in the assessments, in the assessment component, but our writing, our weekly writing doesn't focus on preparing them for that, kind of. Let me tell you what I mean. So in the National Edition, you will be having, I think it's weeks 2 and 3, where you will be explicitly teaching students how to answer a Part A, Part B question, right? So there's actually no writing. They're answering comprehension questions. You're going to be teaching them how to answer constructed response questions, so where they're pulling text evidence and writing a short response. So those of you familiar with Benchmark already, it's that kind of question at the end of the unit assessment where the kids are pulling from 2 texts in the assessment and then writing about how they're similar, or integrating information from both. And then, so because on those weeks where you are doing the performance task practice, there's not going to be that much writing. So that's just worth noting, because it's just kind of odd when you see it for the first time. But it's good because it's preparing them for not just the benchmark tests, but the state tests, where that's a big component. All right, now week 1 for both of us, however, is the writing type is narrative, and the students will be writing a letter. So I teach my students that there are 3 main types of writing: narrative, informational, and opinion. And in the California edition, we do all 3 of those in a unit. So we alternate each week. So letter. Week 2 is informative. And week 3 is opinion. Okay. So this is what that looks like. And national for yours, I just wrote performance task. Okay, so that's our overview. So now we're going to plug these into our week. So up at the top here, see the shared reads part? This is not going to be, this is just going to be NA for us in third grade. Third and up, we don't have these. This is just for second grade, so ignore that. In week 1, we have 2 short reads, so I like to put the text titles right here. And remember, we're using those short reads for our close reading lessons, and so we're using the pink / the red for that. So I'm going to write the 2 text titles in that color. We've got, I'm just going to use my cheat sheet here, Working Together and Election Day. I love this unit, guys. Okay. Now here's just a bank for referencing your spelling words for the weeks and your language focus, so your language skill. So go ahead and just write out what all of your, short vowels? Short vowel words are right there. So we've got conflicts, examples, helpful, imagine. And I like to put one giant word sort up on the whiteboard and have students do a word sort with all of these words. And write the words, like you can even go through it just word by word. So like conflicts, what columns would that go under? Short O, short I. Problems and upset. So we always have just 8 spelling words. Some teachers add in 2 more if they give spelling tests, so it's easier to grade. If you're not given a spelling test, I wouldn't worry about it. Language focus, again, is concrete and abstract nouns. Thank you, Carlos. Okay, so day 1. I have here introduce new unit. So in Benchmark, they give you that unit introduction video that you can show. But if you want to use that anchor chart, that's a really great alternative for introducing the unit and building the background knowledge for the students. So I'm not doing that day 1 because that would take up my entire block. So I will do that like the Friday or the Thursday before, usually like in the afternoons, and it gets them ready for the upcoming unit. So day 1, previously I mentioned that on day 1, I'm not doing any close reading. I'm opening up to our first short read, which is Working Together. So it's about the flooding in Fargo, North Dakota, and I'm just reading it to the kids, just for enjoyment, okay? Afterwards, since it's a short text, I have them immediately do the second read. And the second read is where my students go and they annotate. And I don't tell them which annotation symbols they need to use. And I don't tell them to focus on any areas or read for a specific purpose, nothing. I just say, like, connect with the text, put in your symbols, whatever you're thinking as you're reading this, or looking at the pictures, just jot down some symbols or notes. And that's going to look different for your students, okay? Some students are going to be more capable and they're going to be writing questions and whatever. Some students are going to have a bit more difficulty accessing the text, and they're going to be connecting in other ways. I also give them the option to read like with their buddy, someone sitting next to them. After I read it and then they read it, we go right into phonics and language. And like I said, I teach that explicitly. So you could follow the lesson, 9? Lesson 8, where you're introducing short vowels. You could, move that lesson up from the TRS, so you can teach it however you teach spelling normally. So like I said, that word sort, that could be one way of doing it. I typically just use the pamphlets that I have, or like Benchmark has the pages that you can print off the practice tab. You can just use those even. And then I also, the same thing for language, I explicitly teach that. And anytime you're writing that week, you're being mindful of incorporating that language skill into whatever you're writing. And so if any of you are doing the big cheese or some sort of other shared writing activity, that's a really great opportunity to bring that skill, so concrete and abstract nouns, and touch on it in your shared writing time as well. Okay, then after we do a quick phonics and grammar lesson, then we analyze our prompt. And this is going to be the same for California and National Week 1, because National teachers, you are doing our normal sequence, which is what we're used to here in California. You're doing that also in Week 1. Okay, so day 1, you're always analyzing the prompt. So, hi Tanya. So that's where you have 2 prompts. So in the TRS, they're going to give you a model prompt. So the idea is you're modeling the writing process throughout the week using one prompt, and the students are transferring what they're learning with their own prompt. I choose one, and I usually just choose whichever one I like better, and then we just work on it together all week. So what that day 1 looks like is I will give them the prompt, and it's either like now it's in the writing booklets, but before I made those, I would just write it on the whiteboard, and we would only analyze for 3 things: the main topic, the type of writing, and the sources that we're using. And as you know, I'm big on color coding. So the main topic, we always underlined the words in the prompt that gave us clues about the main topic using red. And then we would take the green or blue, I can't remember, for the type of writing, and underline words that give us clues as to what type of writing. So in this first week's prompt where they're writing a letter, it says write a letter, I would underline letter, and I would say that is a type of writing that usually falls under the narrative category. And then the source. So then in like green, I would underline working together, because it usually says something like use facts and details from working together. And then so those are just the 3 things we analyze on day 1, and then that's it. Then we break up into our small groups. Okay, so my day 1 is it's my easiest day, which is Monday for me, so I need Mondays to be easy. Let's see, and that is lesson number 3. So I'm going to write lesson 3, and then I'm going to write narrative, and in parentheses, letter. Okay. Now, day 2. We're back down on the carpet. Students have their clipboards with their texts and their materials. We open up to working together again. And say, okay, so yesterday when you read it and you were annotating, I also asked you to circle any words that were new or confusing or unfamiliar, or words that you just needed some clarity on. So what were some of those words? Kids raise their hands, they call out some words. Usually they're all circling more or less the same words. And then I do just a quick context clues lesson on, well, let's read a little bit around that, try to figure out if we understand this word or not. Or I'll just give them definitions and background. If there's an explicit context clues lesson that week, it's a good idea to do it right there. Then we go into our first reading lesson, and that's always going to be the key details. So I'm going to use this color, and that is going to be lesson 2. And then I'm going to continue for planning right now. I'm going to continue with my close reading lessons throughout the week, and then I'll go back and talk about the other areas. So, like I said, all of the close reading is pushed a day, and in week 1, there's 7 close reading lessons. So there's already like a ton that you're supposed to cover. So here's where you can get creative. So day 3 is the day where I finish up with working together and I intro election day. So I'm using both short reads. But on day 3, when we first start, we open up working together again. We do another close reading lesson. Now, if you look, I had 2 lessons here. So here I budgeted for day 2 for key details, but there's still these 2 lessons that are specific to working together. So I look at those and I think, okay, there's cause and effect, and then there's analyze graphic features. So to me, the analyze graphic features lesson is something that I know I can probably do some prep ahead of time to create some sort of chart. It's not going to have to be something that's really in depth. It might even be something that I weave into my day prior when I'm going over the key details, like what's important in this text. We might also be looking like, oh, what information are you getting from this map? Oh, that's South Dakota, there's Fargo. Okay, so it's pretty informal, and it's something that I personally don't feel like I would need to spend as much time on. So that day 3 spot is going to be cause and effect for me, especially because I know cause and effect is usually something that my 3rd graders need a lot of practice with. Text structure. So I might write cause and effect here, and then quickly focus on graphic features, or I might put that note here, graphic features woven in with key details. Okay, something like that. Then we have the phonics and the language in context. So we're using that word study text now, which in week 1 is called Robert's Rules of Order. So that's topically aligned. It's going more into it's building on the concepts of Unit 1, and it's full of word study, right? So the kids can go in and find their spelling words and other words that have, short vowels. So I'm going to write the text title here, Robert's Rules of Order. And that's also where I would say, circle all of the proper nouns that you find. Some things I'd bring in the language focus too. Oh, the focus is concrete and abstract nouns. So I would say nouns. So I would say maybe circle any of the abstract nouns that you find in this text. Order. Ruby was crying. It made me start to sweat, but it seems like Dad fixed it, whatever it was. And I used the wrong color. Thank you, Ruby. That's supposed to be blue. Okay. And then we've got the planning. Actually, let me go back to my close reading lessons. We'll go back to writing at the end. So then day 4, after they've read that second short read, and we've done the first and the second read, day 4, I'm going to start opening it the same way as I did with day 2, where it was like, okay, yesterday you annotated, tell me some of the words that were confusing to you. What did you circle? Talk about those, and then we'll go into close reading here. So here we've got the key details lesson again, which is going to be lesson number 7. And over time, later down the line in later units, this might be a lesson that you can not do because you've already done key details once that week. You're doing it in your small groups. In the beginning of the year, like key details are another language, so it's good to get that practice in. Okay, in day 4, I do 2 mini lessons, comprehension together, back to back. So then the next one that I would put in there is the one that has to do with the sequencing. So that's lesson 10. And then actually, like, I think I could probably do some of these together too. So like if I know that I'm going to be doing a sequencing lesson, then I could sequence the text and have the kids only give me like the key points in our sequence map. I know this is the same lesson as 2nd grade, so I suggested that also. That might be a way that you can put those 2 skills together. And then finally on day 5 is your last lesson, the compare contrast lesson. And I want to say you're comparing and contrasting the 2 short reads. All right, now circling back around to writing. So after we've analyzed the prompt in day 1, the next thing you're going to do in day 2 is you're going to find text evidence. So remember, you've just finished doing the key details lesson for working together. The kids understand like how they were able to fill the sandbags and save Fargo, yay. Now you're going to say, okay, so our writing this week, you're writing a letter. You're pretending, what is it? You're writing a letter to the mayor of Fargo, or I like this one better. You're writing a letter from Jack Burns to one of his friends. So Jack Burns is the student volunteer that we read about. So pretend that you're Jack Burns and you're writing a letter to one of your friends telling them about what just happened to you. So what sort of lines from the text do you want to weave into your writing, into your letter? So then maybe go right back into those key details that you were just doing in your close reading lesson and lift some of those and say, okay, when you start your writing, day 3 and day 4, try to bring in some of these ideas so that you can really get into Jack Burns' shoes and write a letter from his point of view. Okay, and then that's it. That's it for writing that day. What did you print that you are planning from? This is from the TRS because I don't have the physical version, so I just printed this off of the internet on the digital TRS. But this is in your physical one before each week. And these, if this is what you're talking about, these are the templates that I made that are on my TPT. All right. Day 3, we open up our writing again. We know what we're writing about. We have some lines from the text that we're going to bring into our writing. Then day 3 is going to be your planning lesson. So this is where I always say, like teachers, if you know and you love thinking maps, bring in a thinking map. If you are a Step Up to Writing teacher like me, bring in those colors, teach the colors, or whatever it is, whatever your previous writing background is, that's a great day to bring that in. And it's also an opportunity for you to even start drafting. So benchmark, the drafting day isn't until day 4. That's kind of a lot to get all your drafting done one day. So as you're planning, you might also kind of begin your drafting, right? So that's another way to make this a little more manageable. Let me just catch up with myself here. It's lesson 9. Then lesson 12, the next day, day 4, is when you're actually doing your draft. So you're drafting the letter. So yesterday you've talked about like the greeting, the closing, the planning, what goes in it. Now you're going to actually draft it. And I model it. I do the whole thing. I write a letter from Jack Burns. And then day 5 is lesson 15, and that's going to be revising and editing. So what that looks like is there's going to be a revision skill and an edit skill in that lesson. And I have my kids pull out their drafts from the day prior, choose one sentence, write it down on a separate piece of paper, apply the revision skill to that sentence, go back to their draft, pull another sentence, out, put it onto another piece of paper, apply the edit skill. So I see, oh, the first sentence you revised it using what we just learned, and the second sentence you edited it using what we just learned. That's a lot easier to grade. And it's also a little bit more manageable for the kids because they're not just going and saying, okay, I'm done, I revised and edited. So that's what I do on day 5. National edition on your day 5, that's where I saw that there was a language focus. So I think you've got another like explicit lesson, I believe, on concrete and abstract nouns. If you're bringing that into your reading and your writing all week long though, just a thought. All right. Hi, Courtney. Hi, Dorothy. Hello. Okay, so week 1 is done, and I only made one color mistake. Week 2, here we go. Now week 2 is one text, extended read, and you've got less close reading lessons. So congrats, you made it to week 2. Now week 2 is going to be, it is my right. It is my right. Okay, and then again, go ahead and just write down what your spelling pattern is, the words, and your language skill for the week. So, long A. Okay, while you write your words, I'm going to open my door. Okay. Separate, swayed, in vain. So we've got AI, A blink E, AY, and A, just A. So again, you can do a word sort. Verb tenses for language. All right. So, day 1, I made a mistake, I think, on the templates. If you printed them out from, before like 2 hours ago, I think I put introduce new unit on all of these pages, even though you're only doing that on day 1 or week 1. So ignore that. That might be when you start, Monday morning or your day 1 again, you might make a connection to your anchor chart. So last week we read Working Together, and we learned about how people come together to help their communities, blah, blah, blah. You make connections. Then you go into It's My Right. And since it's a long text, it's extended, I typically just have time for me to read it, and I don't have time for the kids to go into it and annotate afterwards. So normally I'm just doing the first read on day 1. Okay, then after that, I do my phonics lesson, my grammar lesson, and then I go into writing, which if you're California, we're doing the same process over again, but this time we're doing an informative text. And if you're national, here's what your writing looks like for the week. So it's your first week doing performance task practice. On day 1, you're going to read and analyze a mentor text. So it's not just a prompt now, you're actually given a text and you're analyzing the features of an informative text. Then day 2, practice answering 2-part questions. So I'm acting as if you can see that. So then you're going to go back to that mentor text and you're going to answer a part A, a part B question. And that whole lesson, your objective is to teach your students that, test taking strategies, basically. You're going to go back to your text, you're going to find the answer to part A, and then your part B answer is going to be directly related to what you just chose in part A. So you're explicitly teaching this type of question. Then the next day for your writing is practice answering constructed response questions, so written, open-ended questions. Then practice answering questions that have multiple responses. And then finally on day 5, you always have that language focus, so verb tenses. So National, that's what yours looks like. Informative. So I'm just going to go through and write my lesson numbers in. Week 2, my writing lessons are going to be 4, 7, 10, 13, and 15. 4, 7, 10, 13, 15. Okay. Then day 2, we're going to talk about all the confusing words in It Is My Right. And then we're going to go ahead, oh, I lied. That's only if you have them annotate. So if they didn't have time to annotate, you're going to start your next day with them going through, reading and annotating, and then telling you what's confusing to them. Then you're going to start your close read, which is always key details. Now I do the key details and the main idea for the whole text. And what I mean by that is I'm not going through and I'm combining 2 lessons into one day, because that's a ton of key details. Personally, my key details lessons, close the TRS, I tell the kids what's important, or I help them figure out what's important. And also, like, what I think is a key detail might not be in the TRS, and what's in the TRS might stump me. So I just say, for those lessons, I say, okay, like, I'm the expert here, and I'm a teacher, I know what I'm doing, and I help the kids pull out what's important in the text. And I approach that lesson differently sometimes. Sometimes we'll just focus on words that kind of reinforce what my title is. Or sometimes we'll go and highlight, like, I'll teach them the first word in a paragraph. Sometimes that works. So it's a key details lesson, but I'm not necessarily doing like 2 lessons worth in one. But just to show you 3 and 5 there, because I'm not coming back and doing another key details lesson later in the week. I'm done after that. Whereas if you look here, there are 2, right? Part 1 and part 2. I don't have time for that. Okay, day 3, we've got a lesson, and I chose lesson 6 for the next one. So for California, it's refer to the text. So that's the one that is text-dependent questions for us. So I'm just going to write TDQ. And National, I chose your lesson, draw inferences, right there. Then day 4, I have lessons 8 and 11. Now the 8 is cause and effect. And 11 is draw inferences. And remember, National teachers, I said how you had 2 draw inferencing lessons that I saw. So there's that second one there. And then day 5, you're going to finish up your week with a compare contrast lesson. Okay, so that's my close reading for the week. Then I'm going to jump to day 3 here, because we understand our writing progression now. Day 3, I'm going to write my word study text, because day 3 is where I want to open up that small text, and it's going to be Thomas Paine, and we're going to find our spelling words in there. And I'm going to have the kids, I like to do just a highlighter hunt. I give them the highlighter, and they get to go through and pick it apart. And then even if you have a word sort that you started on Monday and it's still up, have them pull out more words and add to that. Okay, so then there's the planning. Day 4, we have our 2 close reading lessons and drafting. And then day 5, your compare contrast and your revising and editing. And I do give the weekly assessments, and I have it just listed here at the top to do first. It's wherever it's going to fit in for you, honestly. It might not be at the very start of your day, because after they take that assessment, they might be drained. I don't know. For a while, we were skipping this, me and my partner teacher were skipping this lesson, the compare contrast, because it was taking us the whole time to do the assessment, especially in Unit 1, because we're using the assessment as a teaching tool, so we're modeling how to take the test. So I'm reading the test, I'm reading the questions, and I'm, modeling my metacognitive process where I'm saying, oh, this is this kind of question. I need to go back and look for this. It's asking me this to do this skill. Oh, I remember when we did cause and effect the other day. So I need to look for this word because whatever. So I'm totally modeling. I'm even answering the questions, and I'm not getting any data from the kids. That takes forever. After a while, though, we were noticing like we're never getting to that lesson. That's a pretty important lesson. That's your 0.9 standard, right? 3.9. So then we started bringing that back in after a while. It wasn't the end of the world that we didn't do it for a while. We lived. All right, week 3. Week 3 is winning the right to vote. This text has, the right to vote. This text has a lot of dates, so it's a sequential text. It's written, it's talking about when different groups of people won or earned whatever their right to vote. So there are a lot of dates, and I turned that into a collaborative timeline. And that picture is in the Unit 1 photo album, but I also included it here in this file that I'll send you guys. Where is it? Okay. So here's our text. It's opened. It's the collaborative timeline. I just took a piece of butcher paper and I cut it in half lengthwise, and I have my kids grouped to work in their teams, and I put the dates. I went through and I found the important dates, and each of my students got their own colored pencil, which is a Project GLAD strategy where you give them their own colored pencil and you know exactly what they're contributing to their team task. And so there's that accountability piece there. And essentially, by pulling out what happens on each date, what are they doing? They're finding key details. So there's more key detail practice there too. And that made it a lot of fun. So that's an idea to kind of beef up your key details lesson. I might have even got that from like the Build, Reflect, Write page. I don't remember now, but regardless. All right, phonics for week 3, long O, long U. Got arrows, broken, contribution, new, obeyed, told, united, used, and the language is subject-verb agreement. National is just a review of week 1 and 2. Okay, week 3, same outline as week 2, because you just have that one text, the extended read, so there's no like swapping text midweek. So go ahead and just fill that out. I will give you 5 minutes and then we will come back together and we will assess. Lesson 4. Sequencing. Graphic features. Done. I'm an early finisher. Okay. Here's what mine looks like. Also, this lesson where you're doing the word study text, week 1 is lesson 11, and weeks 2 and weeks 3 is lesson 12. So if you want to write that somewhere there, that'll help. Okay, that's California. And national, here's yours. Now you're writing, find text evidence to answer cross-text questions. So a question that uses 2 sources. So you're finding evidence from one source, finding evidence from the other source. You're going to answer the questions. You're going to read and analyze a mentor response. And then language focus. And this was the same layout as 2nd grade too, where I was thinking, here they're finding evidence, here they answer, here they analyze like a example response. I almost wonder if like you could swap that and analyze like what, an exemplar page first, and then let them answer it on their own. But that's up to you. You should go into those lessons and see exactly what you're doing. Okay, and a quick blurb about the unit assessment. It's very long, and it's hard to do it all at once. So we like to administer it over the course of the next week. So in chunks. So just a page or so, a little bit each day in the next week. Sometimes that 4th week, we're doing a project or extending the unit. Unit 1 is one that we extend because we like to do a lot of projects with it. But you could also do this where you start your next unit, but then reserve like some time in the mornings for them to take pieces of the unit assessment from the unit prior. Experiment with that, see what works with your schedule, because it's overwhelming and it's long. So, okay, Tanya says, how long do you model the test until which unit? So I will typically do all of Unit 1 will be modeling. Unit 2, I will read aloud everything, the text, the questions, and the answers, but they answer it themselves. But like we're doing it guided. So I read the text, I read question 1, I read the answers, I say you have 2 minutes to answer it, go ahead. Do not move on. Okay, then we answer it, then I read them the next question. So it's still very guided, but they're answering themselves. And then by unit 3, I can typically give them the test and they can do it. All right, guys. So that's it. I will, after I sign off right now, I will go into our event for tonight. You know how there was a Facebook event that said 3rd grade planning? I'm going to go into that. I am going to give you the link where you can sign up for my email list, and it will you'll get an automatic email with all of this stuff. Completed California plans, completed national plans, the anchor chart, the pictures, the notes, the everything. I've been doing this all week long with the other grades too. When you sign up, you're going to be added to my mass email list. So when I email using that feature, I'm sending out like an email to everybody at once, and district emails will block that. So a lot of the times, not every district email, but a lot of the times it won't even let it into your spam folder. So if you sign up and you're not getting it, try a personal email address and you should have success. And the other thing, other bit of troubleshooting is it's a zipped file because there are a lot of pages in that. So you can't open it from your phone. So if it's not opening, try it on your computer. And then if you're having issues, then let me know. All right, guys. Thank you, and I hope this helped. And yeah, if you have any other questions, just leave them in the comments, and I'll be around. Okay, good night, guys.